In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
Hello. This is Bryce D. Nyer coming at you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, and we are here for another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix. So, we're going to talk about a very, I don't know if you want to call it deep, maybe it's an intense topic, but it's something that came up in a conversation with my favorite podcast producer, Bryce Prescott. Yes, the main man who produces my podcast. Smart guy. One of the best. And if you all don't have a podcast, you should have one. And if you're going to have one, you should hire Bryce Prescott and his media company to produce it. Yes. So we had this conversation about my podcast, Escape the Legal Matrix, and about my future, where I'm going, this thing that we call the impossible game in Wake Up Warrior. And so He brought up a good question about my journey over the last couple of years and where I'm heading, and this is really critically important. And he just said, the topic was, who am I? Who is Bryce Nyer at war with in Escape the Legal Matrix? And that my energies and my focus is sometimes, or could be, misdirected at who to fight the war with. And that maybe my war is not against individual attorneys, it's not against individual judges, but it's a lot bigger than that. And I thought about that, and I thought, he's right. He's right. And so in this conversation that we're going to have, as you move forward in your life, you're going to have conflicts and you're going to have battles, and you have to ask yourself, who are you at war with? What war are you fighting? What is your sole purpose in fighting the war? So let's kind of go through a couple of examples, but I think it's really important because this is what I see every day of my life when I am in a courtroom, when I am in litigation, when I'm in this thing, this so-called legal profession, this legal matrix. Everything you do in life has got some legal matrix component to it. No human being alive today goes without being affected by something legal in their lives. And so when you talk about wars, about who you're at war with, are there good wars, bad wars, just wars? What are the purpose of wars? So, for example, in World War II, clearly the Japanese felt threatened because they were getting predominantly quite a bit of oil from the United States. And in order to finance their industrial war machine in the 1930s leading up to Pearl Harbor, they were consuming quite a bit of oil, and they were invading, they'd already invaded China. They were on the move in Asia, and the United States threatened, to invoke this embargo and cut off raw materials to them. And to them, that was just not sustainable. And of course, Nazi Germany, Hitler was already on the march as of September 1st, 1939, when he invaded Poland and then continued on and just trampled all over France and took them by 1940 and just steamrolled all over Europe. And so at that time, the United States really, I think clearly the United States knew they were headed toward war. The winds of war had been brewing in the 1930s. And when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the United States clearly had two main enemies. It was, the Japanese, and then a few days later, Hitler actually declared war on the United States, and then it was against, Germany, and then Italy, and you had the United States, the Allies against the Axis powers. So there were clearly defined terms, defined reasons to go to war at that time. And then, as you look at history, most wars are fought for a lust for power, a lust for money, a lust for sex. I mean, there's some component of sin or something nefarious in the basis of going to war, and other people go to war to defend themselves against tyrants and oppressors. But in the legal matrix, and in particular with me and possibly with you, you have to ask these better questions. What is the war that each of us is fighting? Who really is the enemy? Is the enemy maybe ourselves and what we're failing to do or failing to say, and we're not taking the proper actions to make the world a better place, to make ourselves a better place? Or do we really see the main problem that's out there in our industries, in our companies, in our world, and that people are asleep or they're tired or they're so deluded or they're so deceived that they need to be awakened? And perhaps your sole purpose, perhaps your mission in life is, once you become awakened and this fire is ignited inside you, that you have a sole purpose and a mission to awaken others. And there is an enemy out there that seeks to destroy you and others in your industries or destroy your family. And, I can cover an example too, like, during COVID. And you can have your opinion all day long about COVID, but there's opinions and then there's facts. What I saw during the period of COVID was such an Orwellian process. So many tyrants in the government and in industries that were just deluded and just went off the deep end and out of their minds in their approach to how they interacted with it. It was just insanity. But it was a prime example of the war that we were in. It was a war of those that believed in true freedom, and then those that were warring to have total control over you, over your companies, over your business, over your children. It was just insanity. And so I know during that period of COVID what my war was. My war was against the tyrannical rule of the government and big pharma and, all these multi-billion-dollar companies that created a lot of the problems only to turn around and use it against us in order to enrich themselves. And that's a fact. That's not fiction. That's all been coming out in facts and hearings and trials and all kinds of things. And so as I went through, all of us went through this period during COVID, and I saw this insanity, around January 2023, and this event with Wake Up Warrior, the sole purpose, it just came into my head about, this legal matrix. And as I've said before in earlier podcasts, about 32 minutes, I wrote out like over 100 chapters, 100 topics that I wanted to write this book about the legal matrix. And it infected me, so to speak, to where I just couldn't stop thinking about it. But as Bryce Prescott told me, he's like, look, dude, in so many words, you've got to figure out who you're fighting. Who is the war against? Who is your avatar? Who is the message? What is the message, and who do you want the message to go to? Who are you trying to awaken? And folks, I'm trying to awaken you. I'm trying to awaken the law students in the law schools that are institutionalized into a certain way of thinking about the legal profession, because the legal profession is a monster. The justice system is a monster. It's not just. There's not truth in the legal profession. There's just not. It is multi-tiered. Some get justice by how much money they have and how much influence they have, while others just get crucified in this thing of the legal matrix. The legal matrix is a real thing. It's not something made up. It's comprised of institutions, universities, law schools, colleges, people in government, state and federal, across the world that utilize the law. They use the law that they write that you can't understand in order to control, to manipulate, to delude, and deceive. That's exactly what's going on. I mean, Satan's weapon of choice is the legal system. It is. Because when you confuse the law, when you control the law, when you dilute the law, it creates chaos and mayhem, and it deceives people. And then truth become lies, and lies become truth. And so as I move forward, as we hit to this new year, just right around the corner, I have to make a decision, ask the better questions. Why am I here? What is my sole purpose? And who am I to war with? I mean, in reality, you always have to war with yourself. It's just like, my membership and my participation in Wake Up Warrior, the 4 main domains of body, being balanced, in business. In body, I have to be fit, nutrition. In being, I have to have a relationship with God, a solid one, a real one, not something made up. In balance, the relationships with my siblings, with my son, with my friends, and the ones that I love, they have to be on solid ground, or if they're so toxic, then they have to go. In business, am I living in this thing called scarcity, or am I living in abundance? Am I doing the right things? Am I making the right moves in business so that we just not survive, but we thrive, and I'm building something and employing people and providing a benefit and putting capital in the stream of commerce so that others can benefit? I mean, these are the better questions I ask myself. And then at the end of the day, which war am I in? Which war do I fight? Which battle do I fight? And who really is the enemy? And so you have to ask yourself, what war are you in? What is a just war? I mean, we go back to like when, President Bush invaded Iraq. Why the hell did we invade Iraq? I still to this day don't know why the hell we invaded Iraq. To this day, I don't. I'm not sure, except I think that probably it was, for the military industrial complex to make their trillions of dollars. I'm not convinced that we needed to go in. We destabilized the whole country, created a shitstorm in the Middle East. Thousands of lives, were lost. I understood about we were attacked on September 11th. Don't get me wrong. I used to be a former Army officer. You got to go out and hunt the terrorists down. You got to hunt down the bad guys. You can't wait for them to do it again. But I look at, the wars we've been in, actual wars with using our military or our law enforcement stuff. What is the sole purpose behind it? Because I'm going to tell you, God looks down on us, and I'm like, people say, well, why doesn't God intercede? Well, maybe he is. I mean, everybody thinks Jesus is a pacifist. Jesus is not a pacifist. He's not. He's just not. If you really read Scripture and really read the Bible, you will see that Jesus came and created wars within ourselves to look at ourselves and the sins we were committing and the evil that we were doing, and to challenge ourselves and say, look, when you die, there is an accountability, there is a judgment, there is a heaven, there is a hell. And you go through these wars internally of not to break the 10 commandments, not to sin. And it's a war with yourself every day to do the right thing, to follow in his footsteps. And a lot of people, they make fun of it. But I'm like, if you read through Scripture and you read all the wars that happened, the people that had wars with themselves, in their personal, in their professional lives, even 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I mean, there's nothing pansy about anything in Scripture at all. Those people were fighting and killing and adultering and fornicating and stealing and I mean, the Bible is just made up of people that were at war all the time. And that God said, look, you don't have to be at war against each other. What you have to do is war against evil. You have to war against sin. You have to war against the evil thoughts that you have. And so when Bryce Prescott asked me, and we had that kind of question, we had that discussion, it made me ask better questions. Who am I at war with? Is it me or the judges or the courts or the Lord? I mean, who is it? I mean, and so I've sat down and I'm answering those questions. And it appears to me that the war is against the injustice in the world. It's against those that would exercise such tyrannical rule that they would take our freedoms away from us and control us to such an extent that it would just be totally unacceptable. Because within every man and woman and child, there is this conviction of freedom and peace and good and evil. And we all have this thing called free will. And so I exercise my free will by saying, to bring this message about escaping the legal matrix, that out there are people, there are entities, there are agencies that will seek to control you and wage a war that their specific purpose is to control you and to consume you in every facet of the domains of body, being, balance, and business. And so your war is going to be many levels about fighting with yourself to do the right thing, to stay fit, to have great relationships, to not sin, to go out there and make yourself and to make the world a better place, better than it was than when you came in it. Because I'm telling you, one day you can say what you want, believe what you want, but I truly believe this, that one day we're all going to stand before God. We are. We're going to stand before Jesus. We are. And he's going to ask, what war did you wage? Did you wage the war for me? or did you wage it for yourself? It's a deep question. So we'll end it there. So ask yourself the better questions and think about it. This is Bryce Nair coming at you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, where every day men and women don the uniform and they go out and wage war against enemies that seek to take our freedoms that we so often take for granted. This is Bryce out.